Ruth Pakaluk was born on March 19, 1957, in East Orange, New Jersey. The family later moved to Norwood, New York. Ruth was a very bright child, and by the time she was in high school, she had numerous accomplishments. She played on the field hockey team, produced and acted in many plays and musicals, was an accomplished vocalist, and played the oboe, violin, and bass drum. She graduated from high school in 1975 and had plans to become a stewardess, but ended up applying to Harvard just to see if she could get in. She was accepted, and even though it meant that she wouldn't become a stewardess, she found she couldn't turn the opportunity down. "I would never have known whether I could compete with the best," she said. Ruth was a straightforward, forthright sort of person. Later, she acknowledged that this could rub people the wrong way, and especially later in life when she had cancer, she would work on this. But in her youth, Ruth didn't seem to mind intimidating people with her knowledge and confidence. Ruth had an excessive appetite for books and knowledge. In her first year of college, she won so many awards for her papers that she was invited to help teach cosmology the following year. In fact, this is how she met her future husband, Michael Pakaluk, as she was his teaching assistant. One day, in her second year of college, she was working on the week's assignment to read Governor Bradford's journal, which gave an account of how the Pilgrims survived their first cold winter in America. She was very affected by this story, especially by the religious people who showed heroic love. She couldn't help comparing their life with her own as an atheist. She said to herself, "I want to live like them. I don't even care whether what these people believed is true. I want to live like them." This would be the end of everything she knew and the start of what she would soon learn to be true. At the same time, her boyfriend Michael was also pondering his life. Both of them had considered themselves atheists, liberal, and Ruth was passionately pro-choice. But now, this didn't seem to be enough. They wanted more. In his biography about Ruth, Michael wrote of this, "We both thought that Christianity should be tested as if by experiment. So we adopted in increments the sort of practices we thought a Christian should follow. We began by reading the Bible. Then after we acquired that habit, we began praying. By the end of the year, we thought we should look to become part of a fellowship or church, because that's what Christians do, we thought. But it was when a friend of theirs gave them a book from C.S. Lewis that they began to consider themselves evangelical Christians, whom they considered real Christians. They then began attending an evangelical church, which turned out to be very liberal, much to their pleasure. In 1978, Mike and Ruth got married. They were headed in the right direction, but they were not yet done with their journey of discovery. God was going to bring them to the place they dreaded the most, the Catholic Church. It all started when a friend of theirs by the name of Kurt, who was part of Mike's college prayer group, shared that he would be received into the Catholic Church that Easter. Caught off guard, Ruth and Mike politely congratulated him, but inwardly they were horrified. They were convinced that they had somehow led Kurt astray and needed to get him back on the right path. They invited him over one day, told him of their concerns, and brought up all their fears and arguments, as well as pointing out that the Catholic Church did not encourage a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Mike writes, "However, Kurt was unmoved by our arguments. He said that he didn't plan to lose his personal relationship with Christ when he became Catholic, or his love of Scripture, or any of the other good things that we shared in the fellowship. He hoped only to gain clarity, stable teaching, and the weightiness of the Catholic faith." Then, Kurt surprised them with a counterattack, giving them an onslaught of questions and arguments. Neither Ruth nor Mike was able to answer Kurt's questions or arguments, but bought some time by saying that they would investigate and find answers. However, Ruth was deeply affected by Kurt's arguments. "I didn't say so then, but I knew full well he was right," Ruth said later. It took a while for Kurt's arguments to take root, but the seeds had been planted. God was working in his garden as well, pulling up the weeds of abortion. As said before, Ruth had been staunchly pro-choice and even declared one day in a heated debate in a high school class that she wouldn't hesitate to have an abortion if she became pregnant. And now she was in a debate with another friend who challenged both her and Mike about their pro-choice views. In the end, Ruth couldn't deny the logic of the pro-life side. The argument convinced Mike as well, and from then on, they both became pro-life. By the end of their last semester in college, Ruth and Mike were resolved to become Catholic. However, They had to move to Britain because Mike had won a Marshall Scholarship to study at the University of Edinburgh. Ruth was not one to be deterred, however, and the day after their arrival, she knocked on the door of the Dominican chaplaincy to seek religious direction. When the priest opened the door, Ruth blurted out, "I want to become a Catholic. How can I join?" She had already learned much about the Catholic faith and didn't need an extended catechesis, so the priest moved her reception into the church to the midnight mass on Christmas Eve, 1980. Mike was also received into the church at the same time. They lived in Edinburgh for 2 years. Ruth got a job in the mail order department of Jenner's, a famous department store, for the Christmas season. With the remaining time on their visa, they planned to travel through Europe, but Mike soon realized that his new wife was a terrible traveling companion. She was always tired and falling asleep on the train. It was Ruth's mother who guessed the reason. Ruth was pregnant. Their son, Michael Jr., was born on November 27, 1981. The birth of her son caused Ruth to look at the abortion industry in a new light. Whereas before, she looked at it only intellectually, now she saw it from the perspective of a mother. After 2 years in Edinburgh, they returned to the States to Harvard, where Mike began his studies for a PhD program in philosophy. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment, and Ruth took a job as a bookkeeper and office clerk. At the suggestion of her husband, knowing how passionate Ruth was about abortion, he suggested that she attend a debate on the subject of abortion that was being held at Harvard. After attending this first debate, Ruth was hooked. She learned of a fellow student named Paul Swope who wanted to start a pro-life group at Harvard. After calling him, Ruth and Paul worked together, holding weekly meetings on campus. Interest from even outside the campus grew, and within a year, the numbers increased to 300 participants. Ruth founded a breakaway group, Cambridge Unborn Rights Advocates. By this time, they had their second child, Maximilian, on June 30th, 1983. Ruth's efficiency and enthusiasm were noticed by the president of MCFL, and soon Ruth was recruited to the board of directors in 1985. Then, in 1987, Ruth became the president of the board. During her term of presidency, Ruth managed to pass a state constitutional amendment on abortion. The goal of the amendment was to limit abortion rights in the state so that they extended no further than what the U.S. Supreme Court recognized. But Ruth enjoyed public speaking the best and debated on many different university campuses, proving to be so skilled that many abortion rights activists refused to go against her. She also did many interviews on both TV and radio. But Ruth's many duties didn't detract from her first duty as a mother, even after the birth of their third son, John Henry, in April 1986. The following year, their daughter Maria was born. People marveled at all Ruth accomplished and often asked how she managed to do it all. On top of a part-time job and her volunteer work for the pro-life community, she was still able to be there for her husband and kids, as well as do the typical household chores of cooking and cleaning. They had only one car, and since Mike needed it during the day, Ruth did her errands by walking. She walked to the laundromat and to the grocery store, bringing the groceries and children home in a little wagon. In answer to the question of how she managed to do it all, she credited it all to her prayer life of daily mass, the daily rosary, and daily scripture. These, she said, gave her clarity, energy, and insight on how to use her time wisely throughout the day to fulfill all her duties. She and Michael had discovered Opus Dei, a group that offered spiritual instruction on living as a disciple of Christ, and through them, she developed a routine of prayer. That summer, they moved to a small house in Worcester, Massachusetts. They lived on a very strict budget, sharing their 15-year-old car. They had no running hot water due to a defective boiler, and they badly needed a new stove and refrigerator, as well as to replace the 40-year-old original carpeting. Yet, they were happy. Michael reports, every day when school was over, Ruth would have something freshly baked waiting for the children and their friends, or on a hot summer day, she would pile everybody into the car, friends and all, and take them to go swimming. The kids were happy, Ruth was happy, which made Michael happy. But on November 13, 1981, they experienced their first real spiritual cross. Their fifth child, Thomas, who had been born on September 21st, died of SIDS in his crib. Since he didn't wake up for his feeding, Ruth checked on him and found him dead. She ran to Michael carrying the baby, crying out, "He's dead!" Word spread and at least 1,000 people attended the funeral. In her grief, Ruth begged God for the blessing of another baby, and only a month after baby Thomas's death, baby Sarah was conceived. They were overjoyed when they found out of the pregnancy, but soon they faced another cross. Ruth discovered a lump in her breast. She met with the doctor. However, the doctor was not concerned, saying that it wasn't cancer. With that, Ruth put it out of her mind. After Sarah was born, however, Ruth discovered that nursing on her right side was difficult and painful. Eventually, it became so bad that she had to stop nursing altogether. The following summer in July, she noticed that the lump had grown even larger. She mentioned the lump to the doctor during a routine checkup, but oddly, the doctor still wasn't concerned. Ruth nonetheless insisted on a mammogram. The mammogram showed cancer, and finally, the doctor took it seriously. She had a mastectomy on October 8, 1991. In her letter to family and friends, Ruth approached the diagnosis candidly and realistically, even with humor at times. She was not overly anxious, yet she showed a determination to do everything possible to get better. She wrote to a friend, "I was diagnosed with breast cancer in September. I've had a mastectomy and started 6 months of chemotherapy. It's no picnic, as you well know, but it's not the end of the world either. Mike is under a lot of pressure, having to write his book, and having my illness totally upset the timetable. On the other hand, if you needed an excuse for an extension, this one is hard to beat." There are many sacrifices when living with cancer. After chemo, Ruth would sleep most of the time, and when she was awake, she was nauseated and weak. Having always been very independent, she had to learn to accept help from others, such as bringing meals or helping with the cleaning. Ruth once complained that she would have rather done it herself, but she also knew that she needed the help and was grateful for it. Perhaps one of her most painful sacrifices was losing her hair. Michael says, Ruth's hair before that was famously beautiful among her friends, luxuriantly rich and brown with golden and reddish highlights. She had not cut her hair from the time she was 8 years old, so it fell past her knees. The chemotherapy caused all of her hair to fall out, even her eyebrows and eyelashes. But on the day she didn't have chemo, Ruth felt like her old self again and resumed all her responsibilities. Both she and Michael agreed that it would be best for everyone to just continue on with life as before cancer. This helped the kids' anxiety especially. In a letter to a friend, Ruth confides, "The children take it all in stride. As long as I don't look sick, they don't really take it seriously. I lost my hair. That has been a source of amusement. I have total peace that God will bring good out of this experience, whatever the outcome." In the meantime, God had more for Ruth to do. After pulling her son from the school sex education class, which the curriculum was written by Planned Parenthood, Ruth and a friend formed a committee called the Committee for Responsible Sex Education, or CRSE. As a compromise to the school, Ruth and the committee members formed their own curriculum, and the school agreed to use it. In the months following the end of Ruth's chemotherapy, she was pregnant again, and on April 16, 1993, their daughter Anna Sophia, whom they just called Sophie, was born. In November of that same year, Ruth noticed persistent lower back soreness. X-rays and a CAT scan confirmed Ruth's fears and revealed tumors in the lower and upper vertebrae in Ruth's right hip and on a spot on her skull. Ruth began a hormone therapy. She continued her work and duties as wife and mother, and the family even went on their usual summer vacation, but she was thinking more and more of heaven, pondering what it was like and looking forward to going when the time came. But in the meantime, she plugged away in her duties. That fall, she took her oldest son out of school to teach him at home, which was considered unusual at the time. But Ruth was ready for the challenge. To a friend, she wrote, "3 of our children have returned to school, but Mikey is being homeschooled. Mikey is math illiterate. The poor kid gets the glazed look of a trapped rabbit when confronted with mathematical expressions. So I'm joining the newest of the new waves, homeschoolers. I think it will actually be fun. Mikey and I get along quite well. He's a smart aleck, and I get a kick out of his sense of humor." In late May 1994, she began to experience once again increasing pain in her lower back and also pain in her right thigh. She had a series of bone scans and CAT scans, and a large tumor was found in her right hip joint. Her doctors decided to place a metal rod in her right thigh to prevent a fracture of the hip. The surgery was followed by a course of radiation treatment and a different hormone treatment. The doctors said it could take months for her to regain the ability to walk around freely as she did before. But Ruth proved them wrong and not only resumed normal activity, but even climbed Mount Washington 6 weeks later. As stated before, Ruth continued her work as though she didn't have cancer. She was not in denial of her situation, as she was very aware that her time was limited, which is what motivated her to use her time as efficiently as possible. She continued to give talks at universities, CCD classes, and high school. She appeared on weekly political talk shows on local cable television, and she hosted her own monthly show called Close to Home, where she interviewed leaders in pro-life family initiatives and was very involved in her Opus Dei group. She sang in the choir, and as if she wasn't already doing enough, she also wrote a play for the Christmas pageant and directed it. With her friend Mary, she organized weekly summer outings to the beach or to historical sites for the parish families. She supervised the students' preparation for confirmation and also started a youth group. During winter months, the youth group went skiing on Friday nights at the local ski hill, and once a year they went on a more ambitious ski trip to New Hampshire. At home, she shopped, did the laundry, and cleaned. She drove kids to music rehearsals and soccer games. Busy though she was, she never considered any task, meeting, or errand more important than prayer. For morning prayer, she would wake up before the children at 6 o'clock or so, make a pot of coffee, and sit quietly in the living room for a half hour with some spiritual book on hand. For afternoon prayer, she would stay in the cathedral afternoon mass and pray before the Blessed Sacrament. Her children were older now, and it was harder to find ways to spend family time together. But Ruth figured out a solution to this too. She wrote to a friend, "My eldest Michael now resists many family activities. He would far rather hang around his friends than spend time with all of us. But my strategy has been to include their friends in what we do. We have moved to a much larger house, still in Woshore. It has a swimming pool. There's a rec room in the basement with a ping pong table. So Michael's friends spend a fair bit of time here, which I like." But like so many tired parents, she at times found the adolescent phase difficult. If you think you can't be holy and prayerful and still feel frustrated to see dirty socks and underwear on the bathroom floor, Ruth proves us wrong. In response to a request from her son Max, who was at camp and wanted a certain pair of shorts mailed to him, she wrote him a letter showing her frustration. "I went downstairs to the cellar to get your shorts to mail to you. This is what I found in the bathroom. 2 t-shirts of yours, 2 pairs of wadded up dirty socks, 1 pair of briefs, 1 pair of shorts, and 6 damp towels on the floor, including one of the blue towels I expressly told you never to use. Forget the shorts. As I said in the car regarding your making us leave late, I have let you get away with a fair amount of inconsiderate behavior. You have a habit of placing the blame everywhere but with yourself. It is not as though I enjoy doing things that seem petty and mean-spirited, like not mailing your shorts, but I feel I must try to get you to see that when you are inconsiderate, you should admit it and apologize. Remember to say your prayers morning and evening. Don't do anything utterly brain-dead. Have fun." In January 1998, a CAT scan revealed that the cancer had spread to her lungs and liver. Her cancer had now entered a terminal stage, and her expected lifespan was now a matter of months, not years. She began an aggressive course of chemotherapy. Ruth had been appointed as director of pro-life activities, and she made it her goal to give a presentation in as many high schools and parishes as possible. But when she attended the March for Life in Washington, D.C., her strength gave out and she collapsed. She was taken to a local hospital where it was discovered that she had pneumonia. The doctor switched her from the aggressive chemotherapies and put her on a new drug called 5-FU, which gave some reprieve. By midsummer, Ruth had difficulty breathing from the cancer in her lungs. The liver cancer was causing fluid to accumulate in her lower abdomen. The increasing pains of her cancer was now taking its toll on Ruth. She writes, "I've been alternating between deep, painful unhappiness and a kind of serene joy. I try to remember that I should be glad of the opportunities to unite my sufferings with Christ. Then, when I actually feel miserable, this all goes right out the window. It's tedious." Ruth resigned from her various responsibilities, and she and Mike spent most of the time available between medical treatments and going on little excursions together. In preparation for her death, Ruth began explaining to Mike some household chores and routines. By early September, the new drug was no longer working. Ruth was now bedridden and had to be placed on oxygen. She was now on hospice care. She spent her time writing letters to her children for after her death, as well as goodbye letters to family and friends. On September 21st, the birthday of Thomas Matthew, her condition became critical. She was given the sacrament of the sick, and by the time evening came, she lapsed into unconsciousness. Mike was a visitor at Brown College, teaching a class there. Feeling obligated to go, he left early that Wednesday morning, but first he stopped in to see Ruth. He writes of this last farewell. "I was alone with Ruth and praying over her, holding her hand, when I was amazed to see her open her eyes. They moved around in an uncontrolled manner, the way the eyes of a newborn baby move. But then for a moment they focused on me, and I could see in Ruth's eyes that she saw me and recognized me, and that she saw that I saw her. Something was conveyed even through a glance in that moment. Not a thought, but something like an affection and endearment of our last communication." Later that day, he returned from teaching to find friends and relatives who had been keeping vigil by Ruth. They were frantic, saying, "Michael, come here. Hurry, she's leaving." Mike hurried over and took her hand, and seconds later, Ruth died. She was 41 years old. They thought they would grieve as a family, but to their surprise, people began to show up at the door. These people had come from all over the city, and many of them strangers. No one knew that Ruth had died. They didn't have cell phones, and instant messaging was not yet a thing. The only reason they came was that they had a sense of urgency that they were supposed to come. A woman even showed up from Boston. She woke suddenly and sat up in her bed after a dream about Ruth, told her husband she had to see her, and drove out to Worcester immediately. The group of 40 to 50 people kept vigil around Ruth's body, crying and praying. Later that evening, the funeral home took the body away, and everyone left. The funeral mass was held on the following Saturday morning, and the cathedral was packed with over 1,000 people. 3 months before Ruth's death, she predicted that Mike would marry an old classmate named Catherine. A year following Ruth's death, Mike ran into Catherine, and after dating for a while, they eventually married. In late November 2025, the Vatican officially opened Ruth's cause for canonization, and she was made Servant of God.